set up to worship the God who was bisexual. And this was the origin of homosexuality and lesbianism in the world. It came through the worship of nature and emulating what they believed God was like. But this symbol of a God, both male and female, is no more than the symbol of the devil, and that is what the religion of the Jesuits worship. Now, I'll try to interpret this too. It says here that while thus by their shameful credenda they account the blood of Christ an unholy thing and do despite under the Spirit of grace, we find no less than 40 years ago Mr. W. Crashaw, in his book entitled The Jesuit Gospel, did clearly give evidence from their approved writers several other damnable doctrines of the same strain with those forementioned asserted by them, viz., that Mary's milk may be compared with the blood of Christ, yea, that the merit and virtue of it is more excellent than Christ's blood. It's hard to believe that these educated men had these strange, bizarre, occult beliefs. But then when you look at this from their own writings, it says they affirm that the diligence of an expert conjurer in diabolical arts, that theurgy, that's the darkest form of art in witchcraft, using demonic powers, may well be thought worthy a reward, and that a fortune teller is not obliged to restitution if he has consulted the devil, nor to confession though he hath expressly invocated the devil, and that it is lawful to consult a conjurer. Devil worship was something that was worthy of a reward as far as the Jesuits were concerned. And they worshipped a hermaphroditic deity. And these were the secret doctrines that Ignatius Loyola believed and are taught to the secret initiates into Jesuitism. Many of the Jesuits became the leading occultists in the world, astrologers in the courts of nobles and kings, magicians. In fact, I don't know if you've heard of this man by the name of mesmerism. Mesmer got his beliefs of hypnotism from studying the work of one of these Jesuit magicians. The Soul Hustlers by Rennie Nordbergen, which can be bought in the Book of Bible Houses in the States, has an interview with Jean Dixon. And it says, she says, as a child I was taught Chaldean astrology by a wise and wonderful man, a Jesuit priest, Father Henry. I don't see how anyone can say that astrology is wrong. After all, he was a man of God. No, he wasn't, Jean. He was a worshiper of the devil. And you made a big mistake. Jean Dixon, a devout Roman Catholic, is one of the most prominent occultists in the United States. She even does the horoscopes and counsels presidents and very prominent individuals. In the book Goury's Doctrine of the Jesuits, this book was written by a French parliamentarian when he was trying to convince Parliament to give up allowing the Jesuits to be involved in education in their country. And so he studied out the kind of teachings that Jesuits received for the confessional, and he discovered some very interesting things. And this is the decree that Parliament made after they studied his work. It says, these doctrines, the consequence of which would destroy natural law, that rule of morality which God Himself has implanted in the hearts of men, and consequently would break all the ties of civil society in authorizing theft, lying, perjury, the most criminal impurity, and generally all passions and all crimes, by the teaching of secret compensation, equivocation, of mental restrictions, of probabilism and philosophical sin, destroy all feelings of humanity among men, and authorizing homicide, parricide, annihilate royal authority, and so on. Through the confessional, they were able to excuse any sin that a man wanted to do. And even today, we see the dangerous results of Roman Catholic philosophy in dealing with sin. This magazine article came out September 1985 as San Diego was ripped apart by this situation hitting the news media. The Pope acts on a plea by loyal laymen against homosexual priests. They had tried for years because their children were being seduced. Their little boys were being seduced in the confessionals by the priests throughout all of San Diego. And the Catholic Church would not listen to them. Finally, they sent their appeal to the Vatican itself and kept hounding on them. But the Vatican went down, and what could they do? The priests themselves controlled what priests came into their district, and they ensured that all of them would be homosexual. So you have a whole segment, and I'm talking about a huge area where all of the priests are homosexual and seducing little children in the confessional. And it's almost impossible to move it. Even the Vatican can't stop it. The facts are that if we were able to unveil the corruption that goes on in the confessional, we'll see one of the most immoral situation that's ever come before mortal man. But because of the confessional and the psychoanalysis ability of the Jesuits, the priests and the rulers would come to them. These men would pour their hearts out before their Jesuit confessor. And these confessors, claiming to keep these things in confidence, were all agents of the Vatican, and they sent all information they received from the nobility of the world back to the general, with the result that they knew every secret of state. And they could give counsel then in the confessional to direct the whole movement of society. This is Henry going to confessional in France, and due to the Jesuit involvement, the Bartholomew's Day massacre, where 60,000 people were killed, took place. It was their guiding. They're the ones that directed the plan to have a Huguenot leader marry a Catholic leader. And then at the time that it looked like all the Protestants and Catholics were joining hands in this great ecumenical gesture, they planned that very night to destroy all the Protestants. The ecumenical movement is a death knell for the Protestant world. Oh, I'll skip that. When we go to Ireland, we see that the same thing happened there. It appeared to be a union between Protestantism and Catholicism, and while the Protestants went to sleep and allowed the Catholicism more freedom, the result was one of the terrible bloodbaths. And still today, the agitation in that part of the world is terrible. We walked through that. We almost lost our lives there, and sometime I could tell you the story. I didn't know how bad it was there. The most stupid thing I could do was walk right through the middle of all that fighting and be a stranger from the United States. But you can see the churches were all barbed wired off. The train station was barbed wired off as buildings were blown up and little children running the streets as little mobs throwing rocks and bricks at people. And that's the result of Roman Catholicism. The Jesuits became accustomed to luxury in the courts of kings. They surrounded the Louises. This is Louis XV. His confessor, of course, was a Jesuit, and this is his bedroom. Those chairs would be filled by the heads of state as they came in every morning for a meeting with their ruler. But before that he would do anything, he would grab one of them and take him in bed and pull the curtain around, and then he would release them, and they'd carry on their activity. And this was done under the confessorship of the Jesuits. But the magnificent world of wealth that they lived in and the power that they had, it was almost inconceivable to them that their power could ever be broken. But England broke away from the papacy, and the church continued to send Jesuits in for years and years, trying to continue a revolution against the government. These Jesuits were hunted mercilessly, but they really caught very few of them. One Jesuit I was reading about had 12 aliases and spoke six languages with accents in each language, so everyone thought that he was a foreigner. One captain came in, and he was being checked out by the police, and he said, I know of 2 Jesuits that are coming into the country. Oh, yeah, well, tell me all about them. Oh, yeah. And he described the Jesuit to a T, and he said he'd be like this, and he had just headed into the country, and there would... And the police were listening and writing everything down. And he says, oh, by the way, he said, I've helped you out. Now, will you help me out? I have a friend that's coming in on the next ship, and I'd like for you to just pass him and let him come on in. Oh, sure, we'll do that. That's fine. And then later they found that this man and the other man were the 2 Jesuits that were coming into the country. They couldn't stop them hardly. They had some people that were trying, they had gotten hold of Catholics that would turn these men in, and finally they surrounded this castle that was supposed to be the headquarters of the Jesuits plotting in England. And when they broke into the castle, they found it was a massive maze of passages and rooms, and they couldn't hardly find their way